Welcome to Your Best Life podcast, where we help you discover your calling so you can live with purpose and clarity. We're Pete and Julie Morrill, your guides, mentors, and lifelong adventurers, and we're here to help you find your true north.
Hi folks, it's good to be with you again. What we're going to do today is I have recently done a life coaching session with a gentleman who preferred that his responses not be heard, but Julie thought it would be good for you guys to hear the questions that I asked, just so you would kind of understand what a typical coaching session felt like. Julie, are there any other reasons that you felt like it would be good for them to hear those questions?
Well, partly I think for you as a listener or a viewer, it would just be really neat for you to pretend that you're in a session with us.
There you go.
Well, in a session with Pete,
Yeah.
because he's the one leading this session. And that way you can pause the podcast if you want and answer the questions, because they're pretty deep questions. So you might have to listen to the whole thing and then think of them later. But I just think it would be good to...
Well, when we practiced this earlier, you said the questions were brilliant, and then you forgot to mention that.
That's true.
But that's
They are
okay.
brilliant.
That's okay. So hopefully you'll enjoy listening in. Good. Still a good time. I'm going to go over a few things that are just kind of, ground rule things that maybe will help us and you as we kind of have this relationship together. First of all, we have a process, obviously, right? You know, we kind of don't hide that process, but your goals are our priority. Yeah. The second thing is it might seem awkward at times because the conversation's all about you, right? And socially, that's not the way you carry on conversations, generally. We want you to become good at saying what you're good at. Again, not socially always appropriate to boast about, things that you're really good at, but I'm going to at times say, tell me how you feel. Do other people, and you might say, that really is exhilarating to me. And then I'm going to say, are other people consistently saying that as well? And you need to be honest about that. If they are, great. If they're not, then you can say that. But we're not going to be humble. That's not the goal of this time.
Gotcha.
Third thing is Julie will be listening, occasionally participating.
I'm here too.
I'm guessing in this conversation, this first session, she will not be a major participant, but she may become a participant in later sessions, or she may even jump into this session a little bit. We're still trying to figure that out a little bit. So
I'm leaving it mainly to Pete.
Yeah. So you just give us a little bit of freedom to, okay. Fourth, she is taping this as a podcast. At any point, you don't feel, we're just going to record everything. Nothing's live or anything like that. If any point or anything you don't feel, or you just don't feel that whole session was appropriate to be a podcast, she's probably not going to put every part of the session on the podcast, but we are trying to give people a taste of what it feels like to go through this process. So,
yeah, and you just tell me if you didn't like something. You can even say, "Hey, cut that out," like audibly, so I can find it and delete it.
Yeah.
The third or the fifth and final thing is, as you can tell by me sending you kind of questions, not a lot's going to be a surprise during this time, right? In other words, I'm not going to throw a whole lot of questions, but I am pretty good at digging. In other words, we'll ask this initial question, and then I'm going to dig a little bit more. I honestly think the Holy Spirit sometimes speaks to me when I'm doing that. I don't want to say audibly, but I have felt like when I'm coaching people, sometimes I just need to stay on this point a little bit more, not because it's going by the script, but because I'm hearing a prompting, or I'm hearing a key revelation that I think you need to hear. And so sometimes, like I said, the questions probably won't I'm going to pretty much go by a script that you're going to be aware of. You're going to even review most of the time. But sometimes we're going to go off script when I feel like, oh, there's something there. There's a nugget there that we need to really make sure, has its opportunity to shine. Is probably the best way of saying it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. What's that? Julie likes to interrupt me right before I'm about to do something, but I'm just going to pray. We're very casual about prayers. We've become more casual the more our walk with God has
More relaxed,
matured.
maybe is a better word to say.
Okay, I like casual, but
Okay.
so Lord, we just want to give you this time. We feel like this process can change lives. We also feel like we all can do better at putting our talents in front of you and letting you kind of move those forward however you want to. And we don't know what that looks like. And so we just kind of open our hands to you and give you our talents and give you our time and give you our treasures and say, align those with your purpose. Amen.
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 So now it's your turn. What are a couple things that you would like to get out of our coaching sessions? In car terminology, and I'm not a mechanic, so this is a big bluff. Is this a tune-up for you? Is this an overhaul, or are you buying a new car? Okay, good. So why do you want to find your life calling? What does that mean to you when we use that phrase, and then why? Is there a transition or a life circumstance that you're looking at? Is there a fork in the road that's ahead, or one that you just took? Is there anything that we should be aware of? That was a major change, right, for you? I think I might know the answer to this question, but do you have any fears with either finding your life calling or not finding your life calling? In other words, some people might be fearful of, well, wait a second, my life calling seems to be pointing in a direction that I'm not even going in. And then some people are just fearful, I don't think I have a life calling, or I don't think it's going to be that clear. We both have been pastors in previous experiences. We both believe in investing in youth and all that. So there's not a right answer to this. Do you think God designs one path for you, or are there multiple paths and you get to choose? And just so you understand, and we're going to take this analogy one step further, in this analogy, we're not giving you or describing a path, we're giving you a compass. And the difference between that is, especially if you and I agree, we both agree that God might have several paths and several options for us, right? The compass is, who do I really feel like God has made me, and what is my strike zone in that world, right? Where is it that I can really use the giftedness and my personality, my passions, and how can we align that? And so, in my opinion, you could have radically different jobs, and you should still have a compass. And this compass should say, in this job, I should focus more on this because that is my strength and that's my calling. And in another job, it might look a little bit different, but for the most part, you're kind of doing the same things. So the difference between a path and a compass is, path could be a career, it could be a relationship, it could be a move or something like that. The compass is, you should always, whenever you get into that new place, you should always reorient your compass and say, now, who has God made me, and what am I going to do to make the most of that in this situation? So in my situation right now, as I went through this, I started orientating and started saying, does my path, my current path, line up with my calling? And I really had to say probably 40%, for a variety of different reasons. How much of your current path is going where your compass would send it?
Not as much.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. When you say think, would you put what description would you put on that word think? Does that mean worry? Does that mean plan? Does that mean work? Does that mean, what does that mean when you say think? I want to think less about my job. And I would guess you like that. You like the fact that you can discover where the opportunity is and then lean more into that direction and use your creativity and yeah, interesting. So let's go back to this life calling thing. Have you ever had a mission statement, a life statement? Have you ever had anything like that? Let me say this. When I looked at your life story, I got a theme of investing in young people.
Sure.
Is that a big enough factor to fall into your life statement? Sure. When I was going through this, outdoors adventure, leadership, and intentional living were really big themes of mine. So
Autonomy.
I'm so much of a natural leader that sometimes it overshadows the person that has the role of leader. I get that. I understand that, and I feel that a lot of times. So I understand what you're saying. Yeah, but that's not super fulfilling nor in your strike zone, I'm guessing. I saw a big theme of problem solving, which is a lot of creativity with an end goal, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So would you put problem solving into that creativity? I want to connect well with the people I work with. I want creative problem solving. I want a community. I want to be able to develop a community. I don't want to bless others.
Too.
Well, and I would guess also your employees feel like almost family. And so today we're talking about your unique story. If you were telling your grandchild your unique story, how would you tell that child? So let me give you this scenario, and then I'm going to ask you to fill in some. So my dad knew that he was passing. He had a terminal illness that was going to take him in 3 to 5 years.
Gotcha.
And so he wrote probably a 6 or 7 page letter to my son, which was really a letter to everybody that knew him. And in that letter, he talked about his life story, and then he talked about what were the key things that he learned in that. And I was tapped to do his eulogy, and I largely just read that letter.
Gotcha.
So it's all said and done. This is Stephen Covey, right? It's all said and done. Your life is over. And what would you want your grandchild to know was important to you?
As you can tell, I did not prepare.
Well, no, these are we're off script right now. So now we're diving into your unique story, and we're diving into chat's evaluation or observations of your story. So there were 10 observations, right? That chat came up with. So the reason it's good that chat did it is because you're not offending me if you say, no, that is way off base.
Totally.
And you're also not promoting me if you say, wow, that really nailed it on the head. Which of the 3 do you think are most true, and which ones might have surprised you that they even showed up? But don't you think it's relevant that you didn't have an answer? But that's not the win that motivates you. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of the picture, right?
Yeah.
We're not going to say that that's not a part of the picture, but I don't think that's the win that motivates you. That one I would say does motivate you. Your life story screams that out, right?
Relationship.
If you were to make a choice between being profitable and being more cohesive as a team, you would always choose to be more cohesive as a team. Am I right?
It's not going to happen.
There it is. I mean, that's exactly what I'm pointing at, is even if they're willing to pay you time and a half or double time, you're not going to take that job. Yes. Right. So chat listed several things, right? Which of those things gets you most excited about? Is that true? Is that a right observation for those two? Would it be, let me speculate and you tell me whether this is right or not. Is there too few significant milestones to accomplish in your current job or your current business? One of the things, but let me make an observation. You and I are somewhat on the same path here. And so let me make an observation, and it's exploring my own soul as well, is you've been in a more influential, more strategic, and more relationally satisfying role. And now you're in a very helpful, very service-oriented, but it doesn't really require your leadership or your strategic mind as much as what you've had before. And you're finding a little bit of a gap that kind of leaves you a little bit longing. You don't need to tell me if that's true or not, but that's true with my life right now.
Sure.
And I'm curious if it's true with you. And so the vision of that motivates you a little bit because it would put you more in your strike zone. And that's exactly where I'm thinking. So just so you know, we're on very similar tracks right now, because I'm in a business that has 2 employees. It's more manual labor and sales, very soft sales, but I feel under challenged.
Gotcha.
And
is that the kennel?
Yeah. And it's supplying good, we have people glowing that this is the next best member of their family. And so we're doing lots of really fun things. It's a fun job.
Yeah.
But it's only using probably 20% of what I think God has given me. And here's what I'm concerned for you with is don't over spiritualize. Okay, here's where I hear it, and I totally agree with it. So don't take it the wrong way. Is
sure.
I'm willing to do whatever God has me to do. Right? Okay,
correct.
That's the right answer for us who have a servant, humble spirit. Right? It's exactly biblically correct. Right? But it's not helpful when you're finding what you think is your highest talents. You understand what I'm saying there? Okay, because that's what we care the most about in this process. We're not caring about what you could do if you were willing to, serve all the time, right? We're trying to figure out where it's really sucking as much of your talent and as much of your natural ability into something that just impassions you. And it feels a little narcissistic, but we're looking at the parable of the talents. And to one he gave 10 talents, and to one he gave 5, and to one he gave 1. So the guy who had 10 talents doubled that. And you're that guy. Okay? Do you believe that? It's a parable, so it doesn't have to be exactly you're not burying it, but you're that guy. And what did he say? Blessed is he because he turned it twice as many. He took the talent he was given and he doubled it. So now let's look at that parable slightly differently and say there could be 2 or 3 of your talents that are currently buried. There are in my life right now, and the reason we're doing what we're doing right now is I'm trying to unbury some of my talents. And that's what we're trying to just identify. And maybe in the next 5 years, you're only going to change 5 degrees in terms of moving towards those talents. But as you get 5 years down the road, that's going to drastically make a difference, because 5 degrees doesn't make much difference if you only go 100 feet. But if you go 100 miles, it makes a tremendous amount of difference. And so that's what I want you to be thinking about, is which of these talents might be somewhat buried right now. Okay?
Yeah.
And when you're looking at those 10, I don't want you to think about what's most youthful or what's most responsible or what's most spiritual. I want you to think about what is most true of my heart. We're not going to ask you to jump out of any of your roles or responsibilities. And so relax with that. We're not going to ask you to stop being a super dad. We're not going to ask you to stop being a great boss. We're not going to ask you to have no financial responsibility for your family. Those are all roles and responsibilities that you need to hold on to and you need to do. But at the same time, if you could keep those roles and responsibilities and you could start to just move your compass closer to what really is your talents and abilities, then I think you're going to have the 10 talents come alive rather than 4 of them or 6 of them. And right now, I feel like I'm working on about 4 of my, if I'm the 10 talent guy, and it's a parable, right? So we don't have to say, so if I'm the 10 talent guy, I might be working on 4 of my talents well. That's me personally. And so you need to kind of say, okay, which of my talents are buried right now? And then kind of allow, okay, does that matter to me that they're buried? Is it really a talent? And I could tell you about 4 or 5 of them that I feel like are at least under a couple inches of dirt.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So that's what I want you to own up to, is say, I do think maybe this, my ability to communicate and shape the lives of people is a little bit hampered because I only have a workforce of 2 or 3 people, right? And that's exactly, I mean, I've had a workforce of 70 people and I spoke to them in a spiritual way every week on a regular basis when I was camp director. So I can really relate to this. So I'm not preaching to you I'm not trying to convict you. I'm trying to say, okay, let's both own up to this a little bit. So we have some possible life calling statements. If you decide that you want to continue to do this, every time we meet, we're going to try to get this more and more authentically you. But we're going to look at 5 other elements of your life in this process, and that's going to add layers of information. Or do you feel like having a life calling statement would be valuable to you? Let's ask that. Do you feel that would be valuable? Yeah. And same thing with me, with the camp. It didn't bother me that I didn't know what I was doing. I just always felt like I could find somebody that knew, or I could read a book or whatever. But I can educate myself, and you value the fact that they see you as responsible enough to pull it off. Even if they don't know that you have a clue as to what you're doing. Well, and your goal is to prove that you can, right? Prove it to yourself and to them. And you pretty much think, well, if the average person can do this, I think I can do it. That's a tremendous gift. So I just want you to think creatively about is where are these talents that are buried? Which ones are buried right now? Okay. And then I want you to think about what are some creative ways that I could do to unearth them. So maybe I also have preached, and I really enjoy that. And I feel that's a talent that's buried for the most part right now. We're not trying to figure out what is the season that God has us in. We just want to say, what are the talents that we could bring to the table as we're looking at how we could live the most fulfilled, most directional life that we have. So let's answer this question. Is this something that's valuable to you? and this
Yeah,
whole process. So we want to do it again. So you've got an assignment on the bottom. So you're going to do that aptitude, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then you're going to, and there's a couple, or there's like 10 other questions that you can wrestle through. You don't necessarily need to write them down in any way, but those are really more for you than for the process. But then once you're gonna send me the results to your personality test, we're gonna lay that over, and then we're gonna dig into your personality a little bit. And so I really do want you thinking about how you relate to people and how people relate to you. Really, that's the key to in my opinion, that's the key to what personality tests are about. And I want you to be able to answer to me. I do think this is buried and this is buried. It's okay. At this point, we're just saying, let's figure out your personality, but wrestle with all of those questions. So probably one or two of them will really make you think. Be ready to talk about those one or two. In other words, I'd rather not ask all the questions. I'd rather just focus on the ones that, that was a little probing. Hadn't really thought about that before.
That makes sense.
If you had one thing that we could be praying for you for, it doesn't have anything to do with your life calling, but if it does, that's fine too. What's one thing that we could be praying for you for? Yep. All right, man. Well, I appreciate the time. And let's, if you're good with this, let's put it on our calendars for 2 weeks from now. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Today's episode of Your Best Life was brought to you by True North Quests, helping you discover your calling so you can live a life filled with purpose. Find out more at tnadventures.org, where you can book an appointment with a calling coach, learn about upcoming True North Quest workshops, and more. And by Marble Mountain Kennels, where exceptional Labrador retrievers are bred and trained for adventure, companionship, and service. Visit mmkennels.com to meet your new best canine friend. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, remember your best life starts with knowing your calling and finding your true north.